So linguists, plosives and fricatives are two classes of consonants. So frankly, if I'm not a linguist, I don't know what they're talking about, right? So I'll immediately switch to, I'll call them P and F. So whatever, I'll think in terms of P and F because those are words that are rather complicated and don't really know what to, think. They don't really make sense in my mind. So I'll just try to stick to the letters then, P and F. Now, a voicing contrast is a distinction between two consonants that are identical except that one is voiced and the other is unvoiced. Now, if the first sentence was confusing, the second is more so, right? I'm not really sure what it means. A voicing contrast is a distinction between two consonants. So some difference between two consonants in the language. So, I know consonants and vowels that are identical. So the consonants are identical except that one is voiced and the other is unvoiced. Now, what is the meaning of voiced and unvoiced? I'm not really sure. Again, things that if I'm not a linguist, I probably don't know. It's okay, doesn't matter, right? The question in GMAT is going to be based on the concept that I do know, right? So I'll not worry too much about things that don't exactly make a whole lot of sense. Okay. In language family X, languages with voicing contrasts in their fricatives always have voicing contrasts in their plosives. Now, one thing that I do realize over here is, and this is something which is important for me to identify, is that this is an if statement. Look, so your model tells you that your if statements can be whenever statements, right? They can be when statements. So essentially they are your, whenever you see this always, this, always leads to that. So these are all your if statements. So that is one thing that I should be able to identify. Language with voicing contrasts in their fricatives always have voicing contrasts in their plosives as well, which means, so let me write this down. I'm going to put it in the form if A then B because I do understand that very well, right? Languages with voicing contrast, if voicing contrasts we see in fricatives, languages with voicing contrast in fricatives always have voicing contrast in there. So if there is VC, voicing contrast, whatever it means, I don't care, in fricatives, then certainly they'll always have, which means then it implies, then it means that we will have voicing contrasts in plosives as well, in P as well. This is a statement that is given to me, right? And when I read this, I should write it in this form. Conditional form really helps me understand the statement very well. Okay. Now, I know how to then manipulate it, how to convert it to only if, what to do about it, right? So it will give me a lot of this thing changes. Okay. Are you being able to see everything live, hear me live? It seems like my connection is not that good. Any issues? Okay, I'm going to assume there are no issues. Great. Okay, fine. So no issues. All right. So then this means that in that family, we're talking about in language family X, right? So, okay. In that family, any given language has a voicing contrast in its fricatives, dash, it has a voicing contrast in its plosives. Okay, so and I see I have to put something of and, if, only if, or unless, and I'll deal with it. So basically conditionals, right? There's an if and only if and unless, and or if I have a statement like if A then B, then it's not both. Then it's not that A and B. So then I'll worry about it. But essentially, then I'm dealing with conditionals, right? And if I'm not very sure when I read this statement, when I read these options, then I know that I'm dealing with conditionals, right? And let me read the next sentence as well. In other words, a given language in that family lacks any voicing contrast in its plosives, then dash, it lacks any such contrasts in its fricatives. Okay, so here they're talking about lacking VCs, and here lacking VCs in fricatives and in Ps. So all right, let me convert it in the only if form. So I'll say, all right, this I can convert in the only if form. How? I can say only if, either I can switch the two. VC in P, then VC in F. right? As we discussed, that if A then B is only if B then A. I can switch the two of them. Or I can do another thing. I can say this is also equal to only if no VC in F. So I retain this sequence, but I make them both not. So I say if no VC in F, then no VC in P. Make sense? This is also equivalent to this. So now look at what the statements are giving me. This means that in that family, any given language that has a VC in its F. So in case it has a VC in its F dash, it has a VC in its P. Look, the relation of what is the relation we have? Only if VC in P, then VC in F. I can also say that VC in F, only if VC in P, it's the same thing. Right? This statement, it does not change. This is my only if clause, my dependent clause. This is my main clause, VC in F. I can write the main clause first and the dependent clause later. Nothing changes in the statement. I can write this as VC in F only if VC in P. Tell me, is it any different? Is this statement any different from this statement? They have the same subordinate clause, they have the same main clause, just the sequence of the clauses are changed. Doesn't matter. I can either put my subordinate clause first, or I can put my main clause first, right? So what we have here is, this means that in this family, any given language has a voicing contrast in its F, voicing contrast in F dash, if it has a voicing contrast in P, or only if. Well, of course, we have only if over here, right? VC in F is there only if VC in P is there. That is our relation, right? So then what should we put over here? We should put only if over here. Again, read it. Any given language has a VC in F only if it has a VC in P. Make sense? It's exactly this structure, right? It is an only if statement. Okay. What about the other one? Other one. In other words, again, in other words, that means they're talking about the same relation, right? Both the sentences, both this blank, the sentence with this blank and the sentence with this blank is restating my if statement. They are talking about this relation only, which means that whatever comes in the blank should be as per this if statement, this entire if statement. Okay. A given language in that family lacks any VC in its P, dash, it lacks any VC in its F. Look at this. Again, no VC in P only if no VC in F. Again, as we said, it doesn't matter whether you put the subordinate clause first or the main clause first, right? This is what this statement is. A given language and family lacks any VC in its P. So no VC in P. Only if no VC in F. It lacks any such contrasts in its fricative, in its F, right? So then it means that both the blanks are nothing but a restatement of this using only if statement. We know that how can I convert my if to only if? It is just that restatement. I'll either make them both negative or I'll switch their sequence, right? So that is why here the answer will be only if for both. We'll have only if and only if in both the blanks, right? If I try to go out of the structure, if I try to, just solve it on instinct, just read it and solve it on instinct, it can get very confusing. Because first of all, your if and only if statements, they can get a little confusing until unless we structure them in our mind very properly, right? Then on top of it, they have used terms that we don't really know, that we're not aware of, and that is why there is this added discomfort. So then, I'm going again and again checking, okay, what was P, what was F, what is all this? It can get extremely complicated. So that is why it is essential for us to structure it. And a conditional statement, if I find a conditional statement that makes me very happy, because now I can very easily structure the data, and I have a process to solve it. Right? Otherwise, in non-math questions, usually there isn't a process, and that is what that is, we can end up using a lot of time to solve the question, and it can be a problem, right? Any issues over here? Do you understand what we did over here?